Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the financial audit and how using Insight software it can help satisfy the audit requirements and requests that they often spring on you. My name's Julie Bone. I've been an account manager at Insight Software for 8 years now. Previous to that, I actually worked as an accountant and have been involved in many financial audits in the past. And then post that, I actually implemented JDE financials. So I know the information within JDE, how you capture data, but I also understand how very difficult it is to actually get the information out in a format that's easy to use and also to drill down to the underlying balances. Now, just recently at Insight, we have gone through our financial audit. Our year end was the end of May. And as part of that process, the auditors sent us a document that basically gave us a list of everything that they wanted to see. So, I mean, that's great. You can set up all those reports, and I'm going to show you how I've done that today. But the key is, how do you substantiate those balances? How can you actually justify where that data has actually come from? And that's key. So to be able to give your auditors confidence, you need to show them how you can quickly justify where the data's come from. So in the first part of this webinar, I'm going to touch on the different points on the screen, and everybody who's gone through a financial audit will be comfortable with this type of information. So I'm just going to jump into Insight. So in order to justify and help and give people, the auditors, the information that they need, it's got to be easy to extract that data from JDE. So I'm just going to walk you through how Insight actually works, and then we're going to look at some of the specific reports that the auditors asked us for and how we were able to give that information to them. So most people, well, I'd say 99.9% of the population are familiar with Excel products. Everybody uses Excel, Word, most Microsoft suites, PowerPoint, etc. And Insight has been written in the same technology. So what that gives the users is this instant comfort factor. So along the top of the screen, you've got very familiar tabs. So I've got a home tab, formatting, console, budgeting. So these are the functions within Insight. And depending on the tab you're clicked on, obviously the options change in the same way it would with Excel. So if I go back to my home tab and click on New, what I'm going to get are a list of templates for each of the different module areas relating to JDE. So if I just open up one of these templates, I'll be able to talk you through how these actually work, because the reports I'm going to show you today and to go through have actually all been generated from the template. So once I've opened a template, what I've got on the top of the screen are a list of what I would call flexible filters. So it replicates the structure within JDE, so I've got a business unit, an object account and subsidiary. But underneath that, I've also got my CAT codes. Now this is key to most people that use JDE, because a lot of people generate their financial statements, which the auditors will obviously want to go through, based on CAT codes. So it's very important that you've got a mechanism of getting information out of JDE based on that. And if you're collecting information relating to subledgers, I can also expose the category codes relating to those subledgers. But just to walk you through very simply how these filters work before I jump into a predefined report that I've created. If I was given a request, so I wanted to see all the transactions for two particular business units, I could take those business units into my flexible filter, or very similar to JDE, I've got my visual assist. And I could say, well, I only want to look at those for my P&L accounts, for instance. So if I now click Run, the system's going to go away and bring me back all the information relating to those two business units for my P&L accounts. So if I then wanted to drill down on any of this information, I'll come on to this later, but I've always got a drill down to the underlying transaction. And that's really, really important, because a lot of information, a lot of reports are created at summary level, but what you actually want to do is to then be able to substantiate that data by drilling down to the transaction. Often when you're looking at financial data, not only looking at, you obviously want to look at the point at the end of the year, but what you actually also might want to see is the transactions related to each individual period and then a total for the end of the year. So using the filter on my screen here, I can have a look at all my periods. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to tell the system that I'd like to look at period 1 to 12, and I would also like a cumulative view, which is in effect a total for the entire year. So I can freeze that column, very similar to Excel, and run this report again. So very simply, I've got a trend analysis for 2 business units on my P&L range for 12 months. And by double-clicking, I can go down to the transactions relating to the information in that particular column. So very easy to substantiate where I got that information from. So I'm just going to close out of that and out of this and just jump back into my PowerPoint quickly. So what hopefully I've been able to demonstrate there is that how easy it is to get information out of JDE. Because not only will you have the answer structured reports, it's also the ad hoc information that will help you answer the questions. So the first thing the auditors generally start with is a trial balance. So you need to generate a trial balance from JDE. So jumping into Insight, at the bottom of the screen, I've got multiple reports open that I'm going to go over today. But the very first report that I'm looking at is simply a trial balance consolidated by object account with my subsidiaries, if we've got subsidiaries in there, for this year and last year. Now, I haven't got much information for last year, but I can simply bring that onto the screen. So if you wanted to bring the last 5 years onto here, again, that's no problem. And with any reports, you automatically always have drill down because these are based on our standard templates. So just going back to my PowerPoint, what this is giving you is instant access to the data. So the next thing that follows on from the trial balance is obviously a P&L and balance sheet. And obviously you'll probably create these every month, but the one that you create at the end of the year is the ones that's going to go into your final accounts and the one that needs to be justified by the auditors. So within Insight, I've created a consolidated balance sheet, and I've got all my object accounts going down the left-hand side with the months going along the top of the screen. So any one of these figures can be justified, and I've also created several links. So from an audit perspective, the auditors might want to look at, because this is a balance sheet, they might want to look at information related to creditor balances, debtor balances, also if there's any fixed assets information on there. But in this instance, I'm looking at a bank account, so I'm going to go and have a look at the supporting transactions for that particular bank account. Now I can see along the left-hand side of the screen that all these transactions come from journal entries. So the next logical question that you may get asked is, well, who actually posted those journal entries? So within Insight, what Insight has done as a company is they've mapped all the data from JDE, all the different tables, so the users don't actually need to know how anything talks to each other. So simply by clicking on the column sorting and grouping, I can bring in the user ID, click OK, and I've now got a column for user ID. So I can easily say that this was demo, this was me that's actually posted these transactions. So it's very easy to drill down and to actually justify who's posted those transactions. We've got one customer that actually gives our software to their internal audit department, and because their internal audit department can use Insight and they know the questions and they have to help the external auditors, it means that they can turn around these requests for information very, very quickly. And they actually verified that they actually speed up their audit process. So I'm just going to close out of that. And we'll go back into here. So very, very important at the end of the year, you want to look at what your bank balance was last year, what your bank balance was this year, and also what the movement of those transactions were. So the next thing that I've got in here is a bank account status report. So down the left-hand side of the screen, I've consolidated all the information by company. So rather than do a massive data dump and then take that information up to the higher level, all I've done is said, I'm going to remove all the columns I'm not interested in, and I'm just going to show this by company. So I've got a view for 2007, a view for 2006, and I can also see the movement. So if I wanted to justify where those balances have come from, rather than go down to transactions, which isn't probably that relevant here, I can actually go down and have a look which bank accounts made those balances up. So here in the subsidiary field, which most people use in JDE, I can actually see the bank account that makes up that figure at the end of 2006. So, intercompany and restatement. A lot of companies obviously work in an environment where they use multi-currency. We, as Insight as a company, we operate in sterling. We've got a company in the US that obviously operates in US dollars, an Australian one in Australian dollars. And all that information, when we consolidate at the end of the year, has to be shown in a single currency in our final accounts. So just going back to Insight, if I open up, and I'll just show you how you can actually open up data within here. If I click on open, these are all my saved inquiries. So I've got a trial balance that is being restated, and I've also got a trial balance by currency. So I'll open that up, and I've just said these are all the currencies that I want to look at, and I've pivoted that information. So across the top of the screen, I've got a column for each individual currency for all of my companies. And so it's very easy to see a consolidated view at a currency level. But then what you probably want to do is to actually show that all restated. So if I just open up my next inquiry, I've got a trial balance that's been restated, and this trial balance has been restated into US dollars. So if I run this, I can see the US dollar restated amount. So very, very easy using Insight and the restatement functionality to restate currencies, and it picks all that information up from JDE. So if you're populating the currency tables in JDE, we can pick that up from there and show everything, all your different currencies in one. So hopefully what that has illustrated is using Insight, you're going to have increased visibility into your organisation. It's very, very efficient and easy to use, and you've also got drilled down to all the supporting balances, which is very, very important when you're dealing with the auditors. Just to flip back to Insight, one other thing that's actually very, very important, if like Insight you're in a multi-company situation, you also want to be able to easily show your intercompany balances. So in this example, we've got my companies going along the top of the screen, and then down the side of the screen, my intercompany balances, transactions, are using a subledger field. So I'm capturing the company that I'm trading with in the subledger field. So I can see that the balance between company 1 and company 300 is £139,000. And again, I can justify that balance to the, clicked on the wrong thing, sorry. I can justify that balance to the auditors by clicking on the show details. So that's where that's come from. And again, I could drill down, but we've already illustrated that. So I'm just going to close out of there and get back to my PowerPoint. So when I worked in accounts, usually what happened was you've got your financial statements that the auditors then came up and said, can you justify this figure to me? I've got £3 million here, posted against this particular account, where did that come from? And because you didn't know which account they were going to actually ask you to give the supporting data for, you couldn't actually be prepared for that, so you couldn't actually write a report for it as such. So what would generally happen is somebody quite clever would run an SQL statement, they'd take a dump from the database, and then they would try and cleanse that, because you couldn't just give the auditors a massive spreadsheet that didn't look very nice and they couldn't see what the data was they were looking at. And so generally someone would then spend a lot of time cleansing that data. Then if they realise the SQL statement has missed something out, they might have to run that same thing over and over again, and then they quickly analyse it before passing it over to the auditors. So really what you need to be able to do is to be able to quickly get to that data, so you've got confidence in that data before you actually pass it over to somebody else. And that's obviously critical when you've got the auditors on site. So I've just picked, very quickly to go over, a list of other reports that we were asked for to justify where information had come from. And these are things that I've picked out typically because I don't believe they're very easy to get within JDE as it stands. And so all the initial reports stemmed from the general ledger, but the second group of reports have actually come from sales order, all different ledgers basically, sales, accounts receivable, accounts payable and fixed assets. So down the left-hand side of the screen here, I'm looking at my customers who I've sold to. I'm looking at all the revenue that's generated and what the extended cost was to me. And from there, I can have a look at my margins. Now, this is standard demo data, so I'd love to be making 98% profit, but unrealistic in most companies. And then I've represented this graphically on the right-hand side of the screen. So if you wanted to give information to someone visually, it's a very nice way of doing that. And then you can obviously justify those figures by stepping down to the next level of detail. So if I just go back into here. So in order to create such summary level within JDE, that would be very difficult, and that would typically be a massive data dump, or you would have had to write quite a complex report. So by having all this set up in Insight, because it's reading directly from the tables, it eliminates all those manual steps. And if you're removing manual steps from any process, you're obviously having a greater accuracy of data, which is critical. So, customer activity. So I'm stepping over to accounts receivable now, and I'm looking at my entire AR ledger. So I've only got 31 customers here, and I've got a gross amount, payment amount, open amount, and I can see anything that's gone on with regards to discounts and applied cash, chargebacks, write-backs and deductions, etc. So it's very difficult to see a high-level consolidated view. Within JDE, it's great if you can go in and you can look at an individual customer and see transactions for a particular time period for that customer. If you wanted to see something, your ledger in its entirety, that would be a report, and it would often be a flat report, so you can't drill down on that information, because what I would typically want to do now is I want to see the account details. If there's if I've received payments, I want to see the receipts. Which bank accounts were they applied to? Who posted those transactions? And these are all things that we can dive off in different directions and answer multiple types of different questions. And these reports are not only useful at times of audit, but most of our customers have these type of reports that they run every month. If somebody was interacting, if I was in charge of accounts receivable, this is a sort of report that I'd be running every day to see how much I was collecting and who was actually collecting that, because I could bring collector information into here also. So, by having that consolidated view, I'm saving time. I'm not having to take lots of information from JDE and put that in a format that is acceptable. As-of-aged creditors is also extremely difficult to do, as is any as-of reporting. So within Insight, we have an as of functionality. So I've run this report as of the end of 2006, when the audit period is that I'm looking at, but you could have done that as of today, as of last month. So it's very easy to step back in time. And what the software does, it actually unpicks all the transactions and looks at what was happening at that point in time. So again, something that's very, very important at year end. You know, if your year ends the end of March, the auditor's probably coming in June, July time, and you want to be able to step back into how things looked at the 31st of March. And this enables you to do that very, very easily. What you also may want to do is, or what the auditors may want to do, is to, when they're writing their report, when they finish up, they'll probably want to capture some of this information and incorporate it in their reports and put notes next to it. So there are a couple of different mechanisms within Insight to take information out. And I'm going to look at PDF because this is probably the most appropriate here. So I could create a PDF document based on this inquiry. If I now click on print, the auditors will have a cover page which is going to give them how this was run. So what were the aging periods, aging buckets, so this makes it a wee bit bigger. What were the aging buckets in this inquiry? And then also, what was the data? So very, very easily, I've dropped that into PDF, and that can form part of the auditor's reports. So just to finish up quickly, we've got a fixed asset schedule also. Fixed assets is notoriously bad for reporting over. It's very, very difficult, and the way that JDE have actually structured the fixed assets, it's quite difficult. If you're on Enterprise 1, it's using a lot of the balanced character codes to actually, when you put in accounts, it knows where to actually post those. So in this example, I'm just showing everything from what the opening cost was, the opening depreciation, net book value, and this will tie back to my asset category on my balance sheet. So we had a user group a couple of years ago. We have them every 2 years, and these are the sort of questions we asked our customers, and this is the feedback we got back, because obviously one of the justifications of buying any software or using any software is how much time you can save, how much quicker you're going to make processes, and how much more efficiently you're going to make processes. So I think what's probably most important here is that our customers thought they were reducing their year end by 10 days. Now, if they're reducing their year end by 10 days, that's because the whole process is more efficient. So if the process is more efficient, that also passes on to the audit when that comes along a few months later. So when Insight was actually won the Partner of the Year a couple of months ago, so I think that's testament to the credibility of the software and how it's actually viewed out in the marketplace. The golden rules when we actually write Insight is it's got to be fast, it's extremely quick, it's got to be intuitive because anyone in the organisation should be able to use it, and it's key that it's real time. Now, at times of audit, it doesn't need to be real time because we're obviously looking back on historic data, but there are customers that are using Insight on a day-to-day basis. They want the information to be completely up-to-date and real-time and to reflect exactly what is in the JDE database. So, anybody on the call today, if they would like to see Insight running on their data, please do so. Please give me a call. There's my email address and phone number. We've had a couple of questions come through during the session today, and I think the first one, which I probably should have mentioned, is someone's asked me if Insight runs on, which versions of JDE does Insight run on? Well, Insight runs on all versions of JDE. We've probably got a third of our customers, maybe slightly less now, running World, a smaller proportion running XC, and several people in the process of upgrading from XC to E1. So a lot of people are now either on 9 or moving to 9. And Insight's great for when, if you move half year, the audit process then becomes a lot more stringent because you've got some data on an old system, some data on a new system. So to be able to use Insight to connect to both databases and justify figures is absolutely critical, and we've got many customers out there that said it saves them huge amounts of time. Another thing, does Insight follow the JDE security? Well, yes, it does. So if I log into Insight with my JDE username. From that, it derives all my security. So if somebody can't see something in JDE, they can't see something in Insight. And again, from an audit perspective, that's quite critical, because when you're setting up your ERP system, you want your reporting solution to actually reflect the security that you've actually created. So yes, we do that. And that was it on the questions. So I'll now sign off. I'll leave my details on the screen, so if anybody does want to contact me, please feel free. Okay, thank you very much. Goodbye.